Welcome to the Americaris Report podcast, the official podcast of the Americaris ecosystem. Here we keep you connected to what's happening inside the MK Lab, introduce you to the makers building throughout the MK Makers Network, and explore the trends shaping the future of podcasting, content, and mission-driven brands. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the MK Report. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Christian.
And we're just going to jump right into it. The news, the line item today, AMP has established the official podcast measurement standard.
Who is AMP?
AMP stands for Alliance for Measurement in Podcasting.
Okay.
So AMP began in July of 2025 under the leadership of Oxford Road CEO Dan Granger. And then after a whole year of them discussing, they introduced AMP Accords earlier this month. Just to let you know, like, this is not a government agency, a regulator. They can't force podcasts to do anything or creators to do anything, but they are a coalition of pretty much like giants in the industry. There's members from Spotify, YouTube, SiriusXM, Libsyn, United Talent Agency, Oxford Road, DraftKings, BetterHelp, Podscribe. And those are like CEOs, directors, and executives within those companies that are part of this coalition. So if they adopt a metric, it will naturally become the de facto standard.
Within podcasting?
Within podcasting. So their goal, I believe, is to protect the industry, protect the podcasting industry, because there has been such an influx of creators, podcasts that shifted what a podcast was really meant to be. They're like, whoa. You know, we got to do something about that. It's not that they want to regulate any creativity or regulate anybody's like message, but they're really honing down on and defining what is a podcast, what is a podcast versus what's just content creation.
And so what has like kind of the measurables been in the past, and what are they kind of looking forward towards now coming down the pipeline?
Well, each platform has its own level or metric of success. So Apple Podcast, they report downloads, Spotify focuses on streams, and then YouTube measures like views. But the thing is that when sponsors, advertisers, companies would approach these podcast brands or podcast shows, it wasn't describing the human behavior.
Their buying behaviors, consumer habits, and how they're actually to measure up when it comes to advertising on the platform.
Because those are still vanity metrics. They don't really say anything. So the problem was advertisers were comparing, apples to oranges to bananas, and then just running with tomato sauce. Like that's, yeah. They were comparing these three different metrics, and it wasn't promising any actual results, know, and this is, again, billions of dollars, on the line. This is such a big industry, and it's growing, that you have to be careful and very strategic with who you're working with, and they're only investing because they know that they're going to get some sort of return. Right.
This is the part where if you were to go back maybe 2 episodes ago, where we talked about how companies are investing into ads on platform, and how it's a $39.6 billion industry as of 2025, and how it's projected to go up to 2026 to $100 billion. This is what we're referring to, is that these companies, these big companies that are spending ad dollars on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on YouTube, and they're coming up with all of these distinct metrics as to how they're gauging success across platforms. These companies are trying to have some sort of base or foundation as to, like, how do we actually gauge the success for these creators, right? And so that's kind of the point of this right now, is that their goal is to protect the ad spend of these advertisers that are coming on platform.
So AMP has proposed a set of industry standards called AMP Accords, so giving everyone a common language for measurement podcast performance. So it's not about downloads, streams, views. It's about it's about measuring actual consumption. I'm actually really curious of how the platforms themselves will change to measure this. You know, how reporting will look like. The question is how many real people actually listened or watched the show.
I think that one of the interesting parts is like, you know, as a company, you know, Apple, YouTube, Spotify, these are the biggest players in the game, obviously. They're trying to distinguish themselves across, you know, from the other companies as to why, you know, you would want Joe Rogan, for example, you know, he signed a contract with Spotify to be exclusive on Spotify, you know, and it's like, why would a company or a brand want to be exclusive on a platform when you're all gauging towards one common goal, right? Or one common metric to measure success by? That's the thing that differentiates, you know, something like Apple Podcasts has their downloads, right? Spotify has their streams, YouTube has their views or engagement rates, with like deeper analytics there. But that's kind of like the core, the root of what distinguished these companies, of why I wanted to be on this platform, you know? So how I am curious to know how listeners and watchers are going to, you know, start spending their time, you know, consuming content and engaging content on these different platforms.
Yeah.
Because if they're going to all turn into one kind of common language or one kind of common resource, like what's really the competitive advantage that a company is going to have over the other company, you know?
Yeah, that's really interesting.
But there's going to be, according to them, 4 different exposure points, which is going to be podcast plays, which is going to count as 30 seconds of content play. Podcast audience, which is the number of unique users who had a podcast play. Ad impression, which is a commercial begins playing for the user. And ad audience, which is the number of users exposed to that ad impression.
Yeah, I was talking to you earlier about podcast play, about 30 seconds of content play. And I think that that's a little too short. I mean, not every podcast episode I've listened to, watched a range of different kinds where it's only like 2 minutes or I don't know, a couple minutes. But I think 30 seconds, that could just be the intro, you know, and you could keep replaying the intro. Like I've listened to so many different podcasts, and some episodes are only 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And so I would say that's fair, but I would think that it would be more so a percentage. So like 50% of overall episode, right? Instead of 30 seconds. I feel like that's too low and that people could milk that. I think that it needs to be a percentage base of people who actually watched, actually listened, and then that counts.
Yeah. So for me, you know, in the ad agencies that I've worked with in the past, typically you would, if you're doing a mid-roll ad, you would sandwich it somewhere in between the first 10% and the last 10%. Anywhere in between that time frame is typically what a company is paying for. And not a lot of companies know that. So if you're doing, say, a 10-minute podcast, your mid-roll should be coming somewhere after the 1 minute mark and somewhere before the 9-minute mark of, say, a 10-minute podcast. And then, you know, you can do the math on that if you're doing a 20, 30, 60-minute podcast. But I do think that it does place weight on the emphasis for creators to grab attention for their viewers, right? In the first 30 seconds, you should be able, for a long-form podcast, to capture the attention of your viewers with a proper title sequence, with a trailer, with an opening sequence that really just captivates the audience, you know, and makes them want to engage. Not something that they would want to skip over. And it's something that we utilize here on the MK Report, and then also on like Building Side by Side and across, you know, our clients' podcasts, which has helped increase like the viewer counts, you know, 3x by just implementing that, plus, you know, proper YouTube thumbnail and things like that. It's all about how much interest and how much attention can you capture in a short amount of time, but not as short as a short, for example, you know, because those are only measuring how long past the 3-second mark can you hold attention for a short. For the long form, they're 10xing that by saying, okay, let's try 30 seconds. Can a creator hold the attention of somebody for 30 seconds?
When I watch podcasts or even listen to it, I even tend to like skip over things. Like say they're talking about this topic. I'm not really interested in this. I want to hear their thoughts on this. So I watch the first 2 minutes and then let me kind of go over to here because this is what I really want to listen to. And that's at minute 8 or something, minute 13. Do you think that these platforms will record that? Like your total watch time versus
them skipping over into
me skipping over.
Yeah, that's a good point. And this is actually why a part of the best practices that we're going to give to our makers ecosystem is that stop putting timestamps in your long form, because you're ruining your watch time. You're ruining your engagement with your audience. Now you can't force them into watching. So you're allowing them to click through. And then now you're not actually gaining the proper amount of watch time to boost your SEO for your YouTube channel.
I guess best practices was or is have an entire transcript of your podcast, have different timestamps for everything and list all these out. And so give everything of your whole entire episode to the viewer. But are you saying that that's not best practices because that's actually removing their interest from your podcast because they can get it in like 4 seconds versus taking that whole entire 20 minutes to watch your podcast episode?
Exactly. And that's why our view rates, even being a small show, our average watch time is 7 to 8 minutes. So we're capturing an average of 7 to 8 minutes on even a small platform, right? Because we don't implement those type of like not best practices that allow people to skip out of your video. You know, if you have a most watched moment, like, okay, it might be good to capture some of that attention so that, you know, a subscriber might want to subscribe at that point, but it's ruining the overall engagement in watching your tech review or in just watching your podcast. You know, this is just like YouTube overall SEO, not just podcasts per se. Is that, yeah, you're ruining your viewers' engagement because you're not forcing them into watching to that 7-minute climax mark or that 6-minute climax mark, you know, that they can get to in a 20-minute video or 15-minute video or however long the episode is.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what comes out of this AMP Accord standard, right? The AMP task force will reveal its full guidance and implementation guide at the CAO summit tomorrow. So that's happening in California.
July 23rd.
July 23rd.
That's the time this comes out.
What's the opportunity here?
The opportunity here is that creators have been chasing the wrong metrics for a long time, and the industry is just finally catching up. And so you need to be optimizing your channels for trust, for watch time, and for deep engagement. Last
week, I asked you the question of what are companies looking for in a podcast or in a company's brand? And I asked you, what are those key metrics? So based on what AMP Accords will be, which is podcast play, podcast audience, ad impressions, ad audience. I don't know if you remember that conversation. Did anything change?
I don't think it changes. I think it just increases the opportunity for the creators that are actually putting their best foot forward to actually get paid well and accordingly to what they're doing properly, you know? And I think it'll kind of eliminate some of the noise and the hum that's in the industry of creators that are just doing it for, you know, for the money and for clicks, you know? Like if they're actually providing real value, you know, in the form of either entertainment or education, and they're capturing the attention and the interest and the engagement of a viewer, and they have an established audience. It just helps with those that actually do have an established audience and not and loyal fans and raving fans, and not just you know, some gurus just spewing out random info.
If creators and podcasts make changes to their content, do you think that will change the behavior, or it automatically changes the behavior of said listeners? Or do you think that they will eventually fall off because they're not used to the new structure or any new type of content?
Yeah, I think you're going to experience some drop off because growth requires change and people hate change. But the biggest risk isn't changing your content, it's refusing to adapt while the market is already moving, right? And so the goal isn't to keep every follower. The goal is to attract the right people and become the most valuable to them over time.
Well said. I do have some notes here of the top 50 podcasts that I looked up. I'm not going to list them, but I thought it was pretty interesting to kind of see what genres take majority. So comedy, there's in the top 50, there's 12, and that's about 24%. So each podcast was 2%. 2% worth. News is at 20%. True crime is at 14%. Society and culture, 10%. Sports, 10%. Business, 8%. And other, 14%. And I thought that was interesting because other than news, it seems that every other genre is just attributing to entertainment and people just being entertained.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that? Well, do you think that there's going to be an uptick of podcasts containing new segments that appeal to entertainment?
Yeah, I think that you need to be creating a show. It's not just a matter of education or entertainment, but I think what's going to be coming down the pipeline and what's going to really distinguish you in your brand is creating a show. So storytelling-based education and turning your podcast into a show where people can be engaged, people can be entertained. You know, you're not just spewing out news, but it's fun, it's entertaining. You know, people can laugh at it, or people can just connect with you. You know, people are really like hungry for connection right now, especially in the world of AI. And so how much can you in your content connect with someone, right? And the way that you're able to do that is by being entertaining or educating them and resonating. And if you blend those two in a way that is very well thought out and curated, that's where you're going to find a lot of deeper engagement coming down the pipeline.
When you talk about a show, right, from podcast to show and developing different segments, and it's you said, did you say it was a mixture between not just like news and education, but also parts of entertaining aspects to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think that we are coming full circle to television again.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, we have our iPads, we have our online platforms, and we're socializing stuff. But the way content is moving is getting back on TV, doing talk shows again. Mm-hmm. So you're creating like live experiences again, even though it's already there. And we've moved into streaming with Netflix, and we moved into streaming with Hulu and all these different things. It seems that we're going back to live and live entertainment.
Yeah.
I think 100%. That's just so interesting.
100%. Yeah. Like those that are creating like an SNL type of environment within your podcast, like that's really the vibe moving forward. Like for brands to truly be activated, you know, you're doing a combination of both. And you're seeing that with Alex Hormozi. He's not just doing education content. He's not just doing his workshops anymore. He's now created a full-blown like Mr. Beast type of show where he's interviewing these business owners, and you know they're coming and they're learning, and it's also it's a real show, you know. So it's almost at like the Mr. Beast type level of entertainment, but mixed in with the hybrid of actually education to these business owners, because that's Alex's target market.
It's not even about where we're moving to, it's the fact that the door to entertainment is just so much wider.
Mm-hmm.
So what I used to see as a young girl watching TV is, and I know kind of getting off track, but what I used to grow up watching are all these entertainers, actresses, and if it was a movie or maybe there's game shows and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
it was always me in my living room or my grandparents' living room watching this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, how many paths do you have to walk and hurdles do you have to jump to get there,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it felt like the door was so narrow.
Mm-hmm.
But with technology advancements and cheaper equipments to produce the same quality, right? The door is wide open that Mr. Beast can have his own TV show, that Alex Hermosi will soon have his own TV network. Like, you have such a wide opportunity for regular people that you don't have to be in movies to attain these. You can be regular people that grow your brand, right, to get onto TV nowadays.
100%. And
Yeah.
I think to kind of go on to that, add on to that, is that it's not even just a show, right? Like, the next wave is going to be whole human, like, entertainment and education, right? Like, for so long, we've kind of stuffed ourselves and compartmentalized ourselves, the suits versus, blue collar versus this and that, right? And it's like, no, like, we are people, you know what I'm saying? And people need to come together because, like, we work with a lot of white collar folks and, 7-figure, 8-figure, 9-figure business owners, founders, and brands. And when they come into the room, when they come into the studio, like, they're just normal people, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They put on, like, their
Persona.
their persona, their
Yeah.
hat, of, like, said CEO when they get in front of the camera. But really, like, when you get to know these people, they're just regular people.
Yeah.
And so when your content starts to create a whole human experience, that is what's going to differentiate you, and I think Alex Hormozi is starting to take that next step, whereas, like, Mr. Beast has this lane of, like, pure entertainment. Alex Hormozi is now taking this blend between both. And I think brands are soon to catch up on that. And I think he's kind of one of the first to kind of really take heat in that lane of blending the two together and how that can actually be really fascinating. Like, Shark Tank is, like, one kind of realm of it, and then, like, maybe Ramsey Solutions, like, is, like, another kind of lane of it. But, like, Alex Hormozi's kind of taken it to that next level. And not to, like, boast him for too much, but it's just like, you have to be forward thinking in all of these industries, but taking one step back from being forward thinking is coming back to, like, what people actually needed from the very beginning, which is this whole human connection.
Right. That's good. As you were speaking, I was thinking about how the gap between a status, entertainment, and what entertainment used to be, and then what it has transpired to now in this decade, and how that gap closes. And so what you would see as, like, this high entertainer or actor, actress or something is now in the same room with these content creators and stuff. But then I think about just entertainment in general. How long can you entertain and capture somebody's attention? The road to, say, television, right? The road to the big screen, the road to those live experiences, the road to that. Is it now? I think the gap is smaller, or the entryway is wider, but I think that you're going to begin seeing, do you have real skills now? It's no longer about, like, can you just communicate well and then right off of that, or do you have the skills it takes to differentiate yourself with some sort of career profession other than just, hey, look at me?
This is the part where you have to look at what you're gifted in, right? And your gift is something that's freely given to you to be used as a vessel, as a source, as a resource to go and serve other people with, right? That comes difficult for other people, but is easier for you to do because you were gifted that. You know, not everyone was gifted with the ability to communicate or to be on camera, like, and be this entertainer, you know, a comedian, right? Like, there's a reason why Kevin Hart is Kevin Hart. There's a reason why Alex Hormozy is Alex Hormozy. Gary Vee is Gary Vee. You know, Christian Graham is Christian Graham. Stephanie Graham is Stephanie Graham. Is like, you are your own unique person that you have gifts to serve people with, you know? And once you start tapping into that service offering and give that freely to other people, or not give it freely per se, but be of service to other people through that, like, you're going to reap a lot of benefits to doing so, you know? And again, like, this wasn't really attainable to your point 10 years ago, you know? When I left my corporate job, right, working at the Fortune 500 company that I was working at, I went to Barnes and Nobles and I bought How to Start a Podcast and How to Build a Personal Brand for Dummies. And these mics weren't even sold yet at the time. These are newer microphones and everything. Newer lighting and everything, newer cameras. These cameras weren't available. But I bought like pretty top quality of what you could buy at the time, tried to get started in it, and then completely flopped because the softwares weren't available at the time, you know, to be able to like do video editing and to do, you know, audio and all of those things and really get it done well without being really skillful at it. And so that's why I ended up pivoting for a long time and went into the restaurant scene because I couldn't get the podcast started. But now you have these resources in abundance to be able to go and create these shows, to create these podcasts. And the thing that's going to differentiate you is your gifting in it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Why do you think that there's a massive amount of people underutilizing said their influence, their authority, their power, right? Is that fear? Is that like where does it stem from?
Have you ever heard of the buyer's pyramid?
No.
So the buyer's pyramid says that only 3% to 10% of people are actually buying into something or seriously interested in something. The other 90% have considered and they're not thinking about it, or they're not really very interested or just completely unaware about what you have, or they're just uninterested. And so people aren't utilizing their gift that their audience is waiting for, either because they're unaware or they're just not bought into the idea, even though they have 100% a message, an offer, and a brand worth sharing.
Or what opportunities are these said groups are leaving on the table?
Yeah, I think service professionals are really over-indexed on short-form content right now, but extremely under-indexed on long-form. And that's why I don't post to YouTube or podcasts, simply because I know my audience is going to watch every single video all the way through. But I post because my audience gets to see my brand, my name, hang out with me, right, for 7 to 8 minutes of time, get value, you know, hear about my thought leadership, and then they're on their way. But on top of that, you can also clip up and redistribute your content into like 20 to 30 pieces of content from a long form video. And so if you want to learn more about that, you know, leave a comment, or, you know, go join the in-person workshop we're going to be hosting for the content scaling workshop right here at the MK Lab.
Moving on to what's going on in the MK ecosystem. So this week we actually had a booking that booked the space to not use our equipment. Why do you think that is? In what scenario do we find these bookings?
So video agency owners and photographers and creators that already have, you know, their own cameras and microphones are typically the ones that will book just the studio rental only, because they don't need the access to our microphones and cameras and audio recording equipment.
as a photographer, videographer, when you're going in and using foreign equipment that you're not used to, then you have to spend time learning how to use it and work around it versus bringing your own equipment that you're comfortable with. And we had Travis come in and he was shooting for somebody for their YouTube Talking Heads. He's not the first one to have booked without needing our equipment, but what do you think that they're looking for?
I think they're looking for like the overall aesthetics, right? And is the room sound treated so that, you know, like you're not in a garage, you know, trying to film a podcast with kids running around, you know, so you have a noise-free environment, sound treated. Also that you have the privacy, right? A lot of the people that are filming, you know, YouTube videos, at least with us, 6, 7, 8, even 9-figure brands. And so it's important that there's like a disclosure to it, you know? And then also lighting, right? Having some professional lighting, not casting like super hard shadows and, you know, all of that type of stuff.
So we give them agency to move things around to a degree.
Yeah.
So they can move like anything here around, but I guess the uplights, we do help them with that just because they're mounted to the wall. Coming up, we have a couple of announcements. We have the Brand and Demand workshop led by Christian. Christian, can you share what is the workshop for? Who is it for? What are the outcomes people will leave the workshop with?
Yeah, so the content scaling workshop is going to be about just that, how to scale your content and developing a system around it, right? So that you can buy back your time, right? We have a system, takes 2 to 4 hours per month of your time to grab a month's worth of content or more. And learning about that system and how you can implement it as a business owner, as a founder, as an industry professional, as an expert, or just any content creator, really. So that way you can buy back your time. You can stop spending so much money on all of the creation time, production time, you know, time away from working on your business, learning all of those valuable tools. And then, you walk out with a roadmap and some tools to use over the next 90 days so that you can start implementing it within your own brand.
So how do they join that? How do they sign up? Where do they sign up?
They can go to merikairos.com/workshop, or they can check out the QR code that's going to be right here, or you can click the link in the show notes.
Coming up, we also have Passion Planner and then a new guest entering the studio. So this will be interesting because they'll be operating, or like their studio time will be overlapping. So Passion Planner usually does their brand shoots here at the studio, in the photo studio. And then this new guest will be in the lounge suite, right?
I think it's executive, but yeah.
Oh, maybe executive suite, even better.
But one of the rooms. Yeah, so they're going to be separate, but operating at the same time, just as we hoped for out of this space, because at 1.0 we couldn't have, you know, multiple bookings going on. So it's cool to see it in action.
Yeah, I remember we had to tiptoe and be so quiet. You know, there was no ceiling for the studio. We just had that sail. So I'd be like
even just typing on like the keyboard or like pressing clicking on the mouse and stuff, like it was all so
it was so loud.
Yeah.
And then anytime I had to clear my throat, I would run all the way. Like I wish I could look back at those the camera and the footage there, but I would run all the way to the music studio, shut the door, then go into the recording booth, right, and then start coughing if I needed to clear my throat, because I'm like, I can't disrupt this and I don't want it to be in the recording.
Yeah.
But, you know, then I would hear somebody just like open up that bathroom door, and we always needed the WD-40.
Yeah.
We needed that to like silence the hinges.
Yeah.
But it'd be like, you know, and sometimes you would hear that on the recording. So I thought that was just so funny.
Yeah, yeah.
Just a couple of other things, right?
Yeah, we got Rise San Diego coming back again this year for their Rise Ilya Awards nominator videos. So we're going to be filming that in the studio. And we're also going to be doing a pop-up at their next Rise Mixer coming up August 14th, where we're going to be going on site and doing a pop-up booth for them so that we can get testimonials and
I called it Pod Pops.
Pod
Pops. So what are some cool things that you like about Pod Pops? Because the thing is, I was like, podcast pop-ups, that's just too much. So Pod Pops.
I like it.
How we're branding it.
That's new to me, so it's cool. I'm excited. Mira Mesa Street Fair. We got the Mira Mesa Street Fair Pod Pop. I'm excited for where, we're going to be elevating the overall like brand experience, for these either clients or, with the Mira Mesa Street Fair, they're going to, have a bunch of residents be able to come. And so we're a diamond sponsor to that. And just going to be popping up. And if you want to see us there and see the Merrick Hyros booth, come on by, and we'd love to meet you and learn more about you. So stop by our booth over at the street fair. That's going to be coming up
sometime in September.
I think October.
October?
Yeah, October.
Okay.
I'll get the official date, but it's October 16th, I think. Somewhere around there.
Got it. You didn't answer this question, but what are some cool things you like about our Pod Pops?
Some things that I like about our Pod Pops. Well, we've never done a pod.
When we do podcast or on-site podcasting, right? We've done that for Rancher Chat. We've done that for
Last to First.
Mm-hmm. And then, at Elevate, right? And so there's different instances. Is there something that you find most enjoyable about Pod Pops? I'm calling them all Pod Pops.
I like Pod Pops because elevates the experience that, you see photo booths all the time at parties and DJs and things like that. But who's done a podcast? Who's done a pod pop, So yeah, just being able to give that opportunity to gather stories and memories and moments that, event videographer or wedding videographer or photographer can't capture because they're focused on different moments,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that too. But yeah, that's the end of our show. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. We love sharing all the fun things that we're doing here at the lab, as well as providing what's going on in the world of podcasting. If you're wondering how to get involved, here are your next steps. Follow, subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform that you are watching us on or listening to.
And give us a 5-star review to help us grow our show. You can also follow us on socials at Christian N. Graham, at Stephanie Graham, at the MK Lab and MK Makers Network, and join the upcoming content scaling workshop live in the MK Lab studio at merrickhouse.com/workshop, or join the MK Makers Network event list for updates on future events. And all of this information will be listed in the show notes, so please spread the word about our show if you've enjoyed this. All the information. Let's go. But yeah, that's all for this episode. Thank you for being a part of the MK ecosystem and staying connected to what's happening. This is the Merrick House Report. I'm Christian.
I'm Stephanie.
We're done activating our gifts in here. Let's go multiply our gifts out there. Keep making, keep creating, and keep showing up with purpose. We'll see you in the next episode. Peace.
Bye.